But no, this is really a not in love story, maybe. You see, I guess it was about 4 years ago now. I was dating this girl named Shanti, and we've been going out for about 3 or 4 months. And our long distance relationship was starting to feel a little serious, you know? And she wasn't that far, only about 3 hours up the road in Princeton. But then one night on the phone, she tells me, I'm moving to New Mexico, but you'll come visit, right? And so, you know, I said the only sensible thing. I was like, yeah, probably. And so it occurred to me that maybe it was time for us to have, you know, that talk that newish couples have when they're wondering if they're wasting their time. You know, I think you may have had some talks like this in your lives, right? But I wasn't really quite sure how to bring it up, and so I kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And that's when the universe intervened, because it provided free lodging in Amsterdam. And I was like, oh yes, that is the perfect place to figure things out, right? For decent people like you, right? It's a place of scenic waterways and fine arts and great architecture. But to me, Amsterdam was freedom. It was like this den of all things base and libertine, the kind of place you get high and have storybook sex with a prostitute, right? And so I get off that plane, and my buddy Brett, who'd been living there a year, picks me up, and he goes, so, you got any interest in this? Ah! And I said, well, I'll pass. And so I spent my next few days kind of whiling around, checking out landmarks like the Van Gogh Museum, the Anne Frank House. But guess what? Every afternoon, Brett would call. He's like, hey, what do you say we cruise the red light district, you know, and check things out? Well, you know, I was always able to rebuff his entreaties, you know, because I was a decent individual. But after 5 days of relentless attack, I began to think that maybe I'd like to see women with jiggling breasts and thighs behind plate glass windows as horny men watched, guys like us. And so I agreed to go with him down by the old church to go check out the lurid Fantasia nearby. And immediately he's like, what do you think about that? And I said, dude, I'm dating someone. And, you know, in the Photoshop of my mind, the faces on all those bouncing bodies weren't their own, they were Shanti's. And frankly, within a few moments, I mean, her face was popping up on dudes' bodies too, right? And my heart starts beating a little faster, and I feel a lump in my throat. I really just kind of want to get out of there. And as I'm about to take a step away, Brett puts his hand on my shoulder, and next comes his masterstroke. And what he says is, hey, easy there, Tiger. We can split the difference and go see a live sex show. I know a place. And I was like, well, you know, might not hurt to look, right? So we go to the Casa Rosa. We weasel our way up to the front row. And this is about at a point in the show where a bunch of drunken Oompa Loompas are chomping down on a banana that's been shoved up a woman's crotch. And I'm kind of disgusted, but intrigued, you know? I haven't seen that before. And Brett is really reassuring. He's like, the Dutch have strict health regulations, okay? So, you know, I call these guys Oompa Loompas not because they're short-statured or they're round, but they're wearing like these, you know, they actually look like them. They're wearing these white overalls, they got green wigs, orange face paint, and they've got their hands in front of them. They walk around like clowns walking like dancing bears, kind of in this kind of weird, sicko rocking motion that, you know, as you know, if you like Willy Wonka, it's very alluring, right? And these guys, they wanted to be in every audience participation bit, right? Because, like, the thing is, the playbill there had performance art, which is the sex, striptease moments, and these audience participation parts. And every time one came up, these guys were hooting and hollering. And it was just before one of those bits that I decided to make my break for the bathroom. So I kind of hunched down low, because, you know, everyone knows that makes you invisible, right? You know, in the prison, that's how you get out, right? And almost immediately, my progress is blocked by this outstretched hand wrapped in a leather glove, and I followed up to the bare shoulder of the owner and to the mask on her face, and I'm thinking, whoa, this lady doesn't look anything like Shanti. mostly because she's like 50 years old. And her other hand is stretched in the opposite direction, pointing to the stage. And I don't know, she looked like some kind of fantastic guardian of the river Styx. And I was transfixed, and I did exactly what that lady told me to do. And so I climb up onto the stage, and do you know, like in the movies, when a character has a dream sequence, right? They kind of step out of their body. I mean, that's how I felt, right? Because there I am getting fitted with a collar and chain on stage, and there's like another me, floating around in judgment. And so this lady, she's kind of like my master actually, but I'll give her a name. Let's call her Lulu. She pulls me down to my knees, and she whips out her left breast and starts jiggling it. And I'm like, whoa, frozen like a squirrel caught in traffic. But at the urging of the Loompas, I try to lick her nipple before she pulls it away. That got me a spanking. But thankfully, Brett was a little impressed. He gave me a sign of approval. And I figured, you know, things are going pretty well. But then this lady spoke, and she's like, take off your glasses. And so she takes them off, throws them over here, and she straps this rubber dick to my forehead, right? And this thing's like flopping all over the place. I feel like this flaccid unicorn. And I figure, oh, this is really great. And I'm waiting for the lights to come up. I think my girlfriend's sitting in the back, kind of cracking up. The lights stay dark though, right? And in this sightless haze before me, it appears that Lulu's bent over somehow. I'm not quite sure. But then as I squint and try to focus really hard, I see her gesture something like this. So at this point, the floating me is joined by Shanti and I think my mom in a committee to discuss, because like maybe things are getting a little out of hand, right? But you know, the crowd's cheering. And you know, I paid 30 euros to get in there, so did they. They paid for a great fucking show, and I'm not gonna let them down, right? So I'm like, all right, you can do this. And I lower my head and I creep towards Lulu, and of course, the dick is flopping all over the place with the effect of slapping her ass. And Lulu decides, you know, my problem is not one of control, it's one of vision. So she gets my glasses, throws them on, and then bends over again. I mean, again, did I have to really do this again? But of course the crowd's going insane and so are the Loompas, and I realize that the fastest way back to my seat is through her backside. So I employ a ramming speed approach, and like a sex-crazed rhinoceros, just go at it with the same result, nothing, you know? And even the DJ is starting to feel bad for me, right? You know, he's in between beats, he's chanting, you know, wrong hole, wrong hole, you know? And so I'm like, man, I feel like a total asshole here. And then she speaks again, right? And she's like, lay down on your back. So, you know, I do what she tells me to do, and she kind of like steps over my head. And I think at this point, the committee is starting to get a little impatient. But I know that penetration is salvation. And so she starts grinding up and down onto this thing, you know, and all of a sudden I notice I'm raising and lowering my head, you know, like I'm desperate to satisfy her, and, you know, ladies, that's often how I feel. And you know, after a few, you know, hearty thrusts, she decides that she's had enough. She steps away, retrieves her dick, and places it within inches of my mouth. So, you know, I figure at this point that my obligation to those Oompa Loompas is over. It's definitely over, right? So, almost instantaneously, the dream sequence ends, the committee disbands, and the floating me rejoins the actual me as I go back to my seat. And we're comparing notes, like, hey, that was pretty embarrassing, but not too bad, right? And the other me is like, hardly cheating. You know, we kind of high five, you know? And so later on, Brett and I went to a coffee shop, and we're smoking some whatever it was. I can't remember. He was a local boy, so I'll let him choose. And he's like, dude, are you gonna tell her? And I was like, I don't know about that. Because I felt a little guilty, but it was kind of hard to stay feeling guilty, because I mean, really, is a forehead fuck worth feeling guilty about? And she's going to New Mexico. Are we ever gonna be together? So, you know, I thought about it some more, and, you know, actually, after a little while, I kind of reconsidered. And I was like, you know, maybe this is the great open to the hard talk about wasting your time, right? Because, you know, when you think about it, the talk isn't for couples that are going to make it, right? It's for the other couples, the ones undone by a flopping rubber dick. Thanks.